Welcome to this episode of the Senior Care Growth Show. My name is Winston. I am super excited today to be joined by Nate O'Keefe. Nate is the CEO and co-founder of Rubric, a decision support platform for senior living communities. Nate, welcome to the Senior Care Growth Show.
Thank you very much for the invitation to be here, Winston. We're super excited about what you guys are doing on the program and glad to be able to share our perspective.
Are you curious about how you could improve your website, marketing, or sales activities to increase revenue for your organization? As a special thank you for listening to the show, we're offering Senior Care Growth Show listeners an exclusive strategy call free of charge. To set up a time to get specific, actionable advice, visit www.seniorcaregrowth.com/connect. We're looking forward to helping you grow. So, Nate, just by way of introduction, maybe you could tell our listeners who you are, what it is that you do. What is Rubric?
Yeah. So, again, I'm Nate O'Keefe. I'm co-founder and CEO of Rubric. Very simply, Rubric is an online assessment platform that helps older adults and their families make difficult care decisions, particularly around that decision to get extra help, either at home or, of course, by moving to a senior living community. We want to make it as easy as possible for these folks to make the right decision for them at the right time, and then to be able to act on that decision as easily as possible. And so what that translates to for our senior living partners is we want to help you reach families that are struggling with these decisions and empower them to move forward when they're ready. And just to give you a sense of how our partners interact with it, they'll use Rubric on their websites, and email and paid search, other digital marketing programs, social, to engage folks, again, who are still in that anonymous browsing mode, people that are on your site, but they're not moving forward often because they're not sure of that timing or need. And so our focus is on catching them in those moments, helping them self-inform, and then take those next steps with you, and particularly connecting with your sales team, sharing a lot more information about what you know about your situation. Just in terms of the numbers, nearly half the folks that we engage end up opting to share their results, essentially becoming these very motivated, self-qualifying opt-in leads. From a practical perspective, that usually ends up being about 20 to 40% more opt-in leads than you're getting from your contact form alone. So it's a program that some of our partners kind of started out seeing as, well, this is a digital add-on. But when they've used it for a couple of months, they actually begin to identify us more as a new alternate lead source, because when people come through our program and end up in your CRM or end up in an email to your sales team, they're fully qualified leads that are sharing a lot more information about their situation. So we're kind of in this world between new lead source and digital engagement strategy that's been a fun place to work, and we've learned a lot from the partners we've been working with so far.
Yeah, well, I was super excited to have you on the show, just because I do think that there is a way to help folks who are making this difficult decision and trying to figure out what's right for them. There's a way to be super, super helpful, and also be helpful for your community or for the business, and generate the right leads and the right results that you want. And so I think that this is an interesting kind of intersection of those two things, a place where you can be very helpful, but it can also help drive business results. To that note too, Rubric really does help in this research process. How have you seen the way that people research options, the way that they're making these decisions? How has that changed over the past few years?
It's a good question. We see the same shift that has occurred in other industries finally starting to happen here. And that is, I want to do 90% of my research online, so that when I talk to someone, I'm informed about what I need, and I know a lot about my options, how they work, what they cost. Nobody shows up at the car dealership today and says, just show me what you got. Cars, tell me about these things. They come in understanding what they need from a vehicle. They've thought about, okay, well, I've got kids. I need to be able to do this, this, and this, or I use this vehicle for my job, so it needs to do these things. They understand what the cost range should be, what options might be available either across different vehicle types or even option packages available in that vehicle. They are empowered consumers. And this, I think, is a great thing for the senior living industry. The more folks understand about for us, it's really a focus on their needs, but their needs and their options. The more that they dispel some of the preconceptions or misconceptions about senior care, the better prepared they'll be to make a lasting choice. We talk a lot about helping people find the right fit. And I think our partners feel the same way, that they want to find people that are the right fit too. It's one thing to, meet your occupancy goals in general, but if you can get people in the door that are there for the right reasons because they've thought about this, they've thought about what you offer, we see that as a much more compelling long-term value proposition. The challenge, and this challenge is also unique to senior care, is that this is not a decision that simply means looking at a bunch of different products and picking the ones you like. I mean, we all have seen sites with a grid of building photos, and one of the things I think we've been uniquely successful in is this is one of the most complex and emotionally challenging decisions that most of us will make in our lives. And the internet as it exists today, websites, apps, et cetera, are not tuned to help with these sorts of issues. One analogy that we kind of tend to draw, and I think it works to a certain extent, but I like it anyway. You've got a dripping faucet in your kitchen sink. If all I've noticed as a consumer at my house is a dripping faucet, and I go to your website and it tells me that I need to replace all of the plumbing in my house, that I need to do what seems to be what might be the most extreme kind of solution, I'm going to say, well, hold on, what if it's just a 50-cent gasket? I think the best senior care websites will approach it differently. They'll say, let's make it our jobs to help people figure out this tricky challenge. If all they need is that 50-cent gasket, let's be the heroes that tell them that. We can maybe say, here's some gaskets that are the right fit for you. If they do need to have all the plumbing replaced, or they do need to make a more significant life change and say, yeah, I think we do need to make a move. Remember that this, for some people, is going to be shocking news to hear, or to kind of finally reach that realization that it may take them a while to reach the same conclusion, and be there to help them along the way. And there's not a template for that right now in the internet world. There are some folks that do it well, and a lot of that's captured in tone and voice, and just community culture. But it's not like you can do that out of the box. And that's one of the things that inspired us to take the approach that we have.
Yeah, I mean, it is a real commitment on the part of the organization to embrace that kind of helpful nature, and to not be always selling and trying to move people in. I mean, for me, it's a long-term approach. And I think that we've seen this in senior care and also other industries that have really committed to this kind of helpful nature. Quick aside, I was at REI yesterday. I was looking for a new jacket as it's starting to get a little bit cooler in fall season. And I told the person I had a Patagonia jacket that was starting to pill. And they said, why don't you just send it back to Patagonia? They'll probably fix it up for you. You don't need to buy a new jacket. And this is the REI sales guy telling me, you don't need a new jacket right now. Like, you can fix the one you got. I thought that was amazing. And, they do a great job with content and being helpful and everything. And I think that mentality is not something that's innate in someone who's responsible for driving revenue and filling the beds and having, a high occupancy. It's just not, it's a little counterintuitive, but it is the right play in the long run.
And we will sometimes make and I think that REI story is an excellent example, but it kind of harkens back to the classic Miracle on 34th Street, where we don't have, what you need today at Gimbel's, but Macy's down the street has it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the kind of thing that generates trust in a brand. It generates authenticity, and it especially if you're in an area where maybe you didn't need the jacket today, but maybe you were going to buy one in 6 months. The first place you're likely to go back to now is REI, knowing that they're going to steer you down the right path. They're not going to try and upsell you something that's not going to be the right fit for you if you can solve that elsewhere. So again, not rocket science, but I think it's a hard thing to live and breathe every day. And it's a hard thing to carry all the way kind of upstream to your online presence, where you might feel like you don't have a lot of control over who's coming to your site and how they're acting. And I think what we've demonstrated is there are ways to get more control than you think.
Yep. And you mentioned this, that, there are some communities that are doing this well, mainly with kind of tone and with voice. to me, that's kind of like the surface level that they see kind of that nice, friendly messaging and we're here to help type stuff. But do you feel like senior care organizations right now are doing enough to kind of support this new way that people are researching?
I want to be clear on this. For all of our partners and virtually everyone we've met in the industry, the folks on the front lines absolutely live and breathe these behaviors all day, every day. They take them home at night. They're thinking about the people they've had interactions with because they're developing those authentic and meaningful relationships. When a family is sitting across from them, they are perfect. They are helpers first and salespeople second. And if their help leads to a sale, that's great. But you'd be amazed, or maybe not, but by how many people we talk to that say the best choice for that family and ultimately for the community is what we were just talking about, to find the right fit for them. Again, what's tricky is to take that philosophy and extend it up to where older adults and families are starting their research. If they're spending the first 90% of their buying process online anonymously and not in front of your sales team, how can you help them with that part of the process? And that's where solutions like what we built at Rubric come in, to take that same trusted voice, make it available on your website 24/7 so someone can have a personalized, positive, empathetic interaction with your brand and get a lot more informed. We find it's often that nudge that says, okay, yeah, I think I am ready to talk to someone. They just needed something that said it was okay to do this, that they're not crazy to be thinking about these options. That nudge that then puts that person in front of your sales team that can do that live, where it's going to be its most authentic and most reflective of the how you can actually benefit that family.
Yeah. And I think, when I was thinking about this topic and how do you shift the website to be more helpful and empathetic and help people make the right decision, I started to think through options, because Rubric is certainly an option. It's a solution to this challenge. Other things you could do, like ebooks or guides or webinars or helpful content. I think the thing that you just mentioned that's different, though, is that this is personalized. An ebook is just an ebook, and it's a guide, and it could be helpful. Yeah. But it's not specific advice tailored to that person's unique set of circumstances. Tell me a little bit more about how something like Rubric works to be that personalized solution, because I think this is sort of new for folks who are not familiar.
Yeah, and that really kind of harkens back to our founding story when me and my co-founder were dealing with care issues, actually at the opposite ends of the age spectrum. I had a 26-week preemie at the time, so super early. He's doing great today, but I was going through that experience. My co-founder was helping with as the primary caregiver for her mother and her in-laws. And our shared experience was how hard it is to become informed online when you're in one of these sort of crisis states. And I think we all do this thing now where we go to Google following either an observation that concerns us or a diagnosis or some sort of other crisis trigger. And we'll spend hours on that platform looking for information that feels accurate, that feels relevant, and feels personalized. And as someone myself who had a digital product background, when I was in those moments of crisis myself, I found the whole process of becoming informed online really frustrating. You really have to become an expert at online research. And the kernel of the Rubric philosophy was, well, hey, what if a platform asked you a few questions about your situation? Couldn't it then bring back a much more curated set of tools and information and resources? And then what if we took that a step further and structured it around an informed decision-making process using some of what medical decision science has determined are ways that people think about these complex issues. And so essentially is what if kind of consumer health or care information was A, personalized so you can see yourself in it, and B, action oriented. So it wasn't just, here's what you're dealing with, good luck, but here's what you're dealing with. Here's how you can talk with your family about it. Here's how you can talk with a care provider. Here's some more research you can do with experts in this area. Because I think, a lot of us are used to reading a disease monograph on a WebMD or on another information site. And it's just really hard to see what feels like a really unique situation that you're going through in that kind of static information. That's not to say that having that information on your websites isn't absolutely key. I think that's a big part of it. But I think what you'll find is that there are more people who are more willing to engage in something directly that is personalized than you might think, if you give them the opportunity to do that. And if it's done in a way that really does promote their best interests first, that it can be anonymous, that it's unbiased, that it builds that trust. And that's the gap. Again, we've tried to make it easier to accelerate that without trying to figure all of that, decision science piece out for yourselves.
Yep. Yeah, that's awesome. And then, that is a lot of kind of smarts that you can add to a website pretty quickly with this decision guiding platform. What kind of results have you seen? You mentioned that people are more willing to give up that information than you might think. What results have you seen from folks who have implemented something like this?
Yeah. Obviously, we're biased on this one. But our partners do see some pretty compelling numbers from the platform. Kind of from a hard numbers perspective, one of the pieces of data that's been very consistent across providers, whether they have 5 communities or 50 communities, is they'll start to see 20 to 40% more online leads the day they go live with Rubric. And so this kind of immediately validates that there is an audience out there that's on your site today that is not moving forward because for a variety of reasons, but we tend to think of it as uncertainty or inertia, where they're noticing changes, they know they need to do something, but they just need that nudge that says it's okay to take that next step, something that might validate their own beliefs and in some ways reduce guilt. I mean, if you have something on the site that says, yeah, I think based on what you said, a moderate level of care would be appropriate, and meeting that need in an assisted living environment would also be beneficial, that can reduce guilt that you've kind of autonomously said, yeah, we need to put mom in a home,
right,
because you've got something that feels and is validated behind that, is to do that. So that almost immediately, Rubric almost immediately exposes that audiences and gives them something that lets them move forward. We find, one of the interesting things about the platform is, there are 23 questions that somebody that's going through it is answering and then opting in to share those results. So you get some really fascinating kind of demographic and dispositional data. We found that the audiences will typically comprise both older adults and families. So we consider that to, on average, be 20% kind of prospects themselves are a lot more willing than our partners tend to think to go through something that says, is it time to get help? Because I think there's this kind of preconception or misconception that people don't want to think about their own care needs when they're looking for themselves for an independent living option. We've had IL-focused partners that have put this in the channel and found 30 to 40% of their responses are people that are willing to do that self-assessment and willing to share those results with them. And then the other kind of 80, 60%, depending on who the partner is, will be that more kind of expected typical adult child. And it's they're usually looking for mom or dad. You will see some spouse responses come through. One of the neat things is kind of going through the aggregate data report after the first month and seeing, well, how does this confirm what you thought about your audience and what in here is different? Because it's really kind of an illuminating process. One of the other pieces that has been really instructive to us and our partners has been the last question in the assessment is kind of, in your gut, what do you think is the right choice? It's meant to sort of free up the respondent to say, well, it's not just about the person I'm concerned about, it's about what's best for all of us. And 80% of the time, 80% plus of the time, folks will answer that question, it's senior living. And what that has told us is that by the time somebody has come to your website and they're researching, they know this is going to be the best choice or a top choice for them, a priority choice for them to consider. But often it really is just, they just need that nudge that allows them to take that next step with their expectations managed about what's going to happen when I pick up the phone and talk to someone. What are they going to ask me? What's that? Are they going to be too salesy, or are they going to be, and we think most of them will be pleasantly surprised when they find that kind of empathetic tone continuing in those live conversations.
Yeah.
From a softer perspective, they'll start to hear kind of their prospects echo back some empathetic language to them. This really helped build my trust. Thanks for helping me think through this. This is what convinced me to take that next step. And again, these are the philosophies all of our partners already have. It just allows them to echo that or reflect that or be their best selves, even in places where they don't typically have that core competency around digital engagement.
Yeah, I think that's really a good solution. I mean, and you said it best. It is the folks on the front line already live and breathe this mentality. They want to be helpful and empathetic. And I think if you get someone to that point where they're interacting with someone in the community, they're likely going to do the right thing and guide them to the right decision. It's just that on the website, you do go from here we are, take a tour, or like talk to somebody, and maybe somebody's just not to that point yet. I think this is a good way to engage those earlier stage leads who are just kind of researching and maybe not quite sure that they're ready to talk to somebody. And then, my next thought is somebody fills out or goes through the questionnaire. They get the study. Wouldn't it be great to follow up with them with additional resources and kind of nurture them as they're getting to that point of decision?
And that's, we like to think of it as, and this is intended to be very person-centric too, is we kind of describe it as helping people get into their right swim lanes. And if they still want to remain anonymous, then that is completely okay. And one of the experience we all has hated as consumers is when you go through an engaging experience, you're held hostage for your results. That can really quickly create a negative impression. Like, why do you haven't earned the right to ask for my contact information yet or my email address? And I'll share that when I'm ready. And when you built enough trust for me to do that. So if you want to remain anonymous, and a lot of folks in this phase of the decision still do, and those people will get an email in their inbox with your name on it and with this report. So they've had a positive touch, and it's something that's sitting with them that when they're ready to kind of re-engage, again, Miracle on 34th Street, hopefully you'll be back at the top of that list. The second swim lane is, I like to use the phone and I want to talk to someone. I just needed to get to the right point. I'm ready to talk. And those are the folks that when they say yes, definitely, or maybe, they fill out the contact form and they're opting in. They're saying, I'm ready to share my results and all my information with this partner. It's a much more deliberately qualified lead now because they're, again, we didn't want to do any smoke and mirrors around or trickery around. Well, yes, you're secretly opting in to share this, even though it was in the fine print. We want to be very deliberate that the people that are coming through to our partners as sales qualified and sharing that information know what to expect too, so that when they get on the phone together, there's not a, why are you calling me again? Which is always an awkward experience. And then the middle swim lane is, I think I'm ready to start consuming some more kind of information or nurturing from this partner or this brand. So I'll give my email address, but I don't want to talk to anybody yet. And as a consumer myself, those are kind of the three mindsets I'm in. And the more platforms or websites acknowledge that and have a easy place for me to land, just the better I feel about it and the more I trust it. And so we've tried to echo that here. And I think the nice thing is we haven't had to do a lot of convincing of our partners. So many of them have that same philosophy. It can just be hard to kind of take that and again find what's the UX and UI and language that makes that a reality or makes that easier to do.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. So Nate, you brought up a lot of good points here. And I think that bridging the gap for those leads who are not quite ready to come in and take a tour, quite ready to talk to somebody, but giving them the helpful guidance, personalized guidance, all of that is, for me, just spot on. I think it makes a ton of sense as people are shifting to doing the research on their own. And like you said, they're not coming to the car dealer saying, what cars do you have available? They're coming to the car dealer saying, I want this car. They've already done all the research. They know exactly what they want. So, as communities are trying to change and to do this stuff a little bit better, what are some of the things that you would recommend that they do? What kind of, low hanging fruit should they tackle first? What would be your to-do list for folks who are listening saying like, yep, I want to get there?
Yeah. And I think that's, there's not just one answer and it's not just a series of tactics that you can flip on necessarily. I mean, again, fortunately, work in an industry that is so mission driven, and so most folks from the maintenance team, the executive level, to everyone puts families first. However, if your organization does have cultural gaps and folks aren't living that every day, it can be really hard to fix it with digital band-aids or any band-aid. I think if that foundational work, perhaps you've recently had a merger or there's been some other change that has left a cultural gap there. I think, again, it's hard to just build on top of that with a framework of programs that fixes everything. I think because if ultimately it is going to depend on the interaction that somebody has when they walk in or when they talk to you on the phone. And if there's a gap between an experience they have on the website and the experience they have in person, one can sort of make up for the other, but consistency is really where that trust is earned. And so, again, I think it's all of our, everyone's always working on, even if their culture is top notch, they recognize that it's something that requires kind of constant maintenance. If those cultural building blocks are sound, then I think it's a couple of things. It's finding the voice in your marketing that reflects that. And some of that may be echoing what you hear from peer company, that you like the way they talk about it, but then finding your unique angle, and then offering the digital tools and programs that support that. I would say some of our most successful partners have some traits in common. This one is not universal, but we find that having centralized management of online leads can both ease burden for community level sales teams and allow you to really develop a core competency around the unique skills required to work with and nurture online leads, whether they come from Rubric or other sources. So there may be someone in your organization that's always online, kind of maybe they grew up online, loves to communicate in writing, responds super fast, and knows enough about your brand and your profile to represent you across the board. Consider, routing all of your online leads to that champion or series of people that can triage them and then send them out to the community level when it's time to say, okay, well, it looks like you're specifically interested in this area. Let me connect you with the expert there. But I think it is it's not a completely unique skill set, but I think there are some dispositional challenges that might not be impacted by, oh my gosh, 3 people just walked in the door, so I can't respond to those leads until tomorrow. That kind of brings me to the next, which is the cliche of speed to lead, but it really does matter. I mean, it doesn't mean you make the phone ring in 8 seconds necessarily, but it means sending out a personalized response with an empathetic tone. If you can do it in under an hour, that's great. People will notice. They say, wow, you got back to me really fast. And I think it sort of plants the seed that if you're an organization that responds quickly and deliberately when I have a question at this level, you're also going to help my mom or my dad when they need help in a similar time frame. Just a couple of final thoughts on that. It's using the right tools. Of course, we believe everybody can benefit from tools like Rubric, but adding live chat can be really good for certain audiences that are at that point where they do want to schedule something or get a piece of information. I think a lot of our partners are, and this is not completely unique, but I think doing it's important. That's bringing personal stories from residents to the forefront, and whether that's video or other narrative forms, and I think letting them talk about maybe some of the reluctance they had in making that initial decision. I think helping people overcome objections often is understanding that a lot of the people that are happy or that this was a successful choice for had the same reservations you have. So maybe not being afraid to talk about some of the challenges, not trying to sugarcoat all aspects of it. I think that authenticity resonates and builds trust. And some of that's just getting the camera crew out with, someone from your community and then a resident and filming an hour conversation and looking for those tidbits that can be helpful. And so I think there's a lot that can be done with what's out there today and with what's already internally happening in your environment. It's just bringing it to the surface in the right way.
Yeah, I love that response. You've got so many good tidbits of information and advice there, but I think that starting with culture is so important. And I thought your point around the difference between website and in-person experiences, where so many organizations do have disconnects on one side or the other. And starting with the culture, firming that up and making sure that that message is consistent across the entire organization, I think is really the way to go on building that foundation and then putting the tools in place to support. So, man, all really, really good advice, Nate. I can't tell you how much I appreciate having you on the show. Would love to have you back sometime.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the feedback. And I think coming from folks like yourself that have spent a lot of time working hands-on with partners in this world and elsewhere to solve these problems. We're not going to be the ones that are going to, we can't figure out your website, we can't figure out your content strategy. Having partners in the agency world and the other technology partner world that support the same philosophies are so critical to us. And so it's great when, what you all are doing is I think, an important voice. And we need folks like you to make our stuff work. And so appreciate, again, the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again, Nate. You've been listening to the Senior Care Growth Show. My name is Winston. Thanks for tuning in. Check us out on our next episode of the Senior Care Growth Show, where senior care sales and marketing professionals come to grow. Thanks a lot.